Were there serial killers in ancient Rome?
I'm Garrett Ryan. And this is the short answer.
Okay.
Today's question is, were there serial killers in ancient Rome?
What would an ancient Roman serial killer like MO be?
Death was everywhere in ancient Rome. It came on windy summer nights when a stray spark could send flames flying from roof to roof faster than a horse could gallop. It came when winter rains darkened the hills and the raging Tiber tore blocks of tenements from their foundations. It came all through the months of autumn when clouds of mosquitoes drifted through open windows.
Am I listening to Shakespeare? Is this the reincarnation of Shakespeare? What?
And half the city was racked by the fever and chills of malaria. And it came, in every season, at the hands of human predators.
Cursed be the morrow.
We have no way of estimating the murder rate in ancient Rome. Most murders were never reported.
Don't
Those
look.
that were reported were seldom solved.
Don't
And those
look.
that were solved almost never made it
He's
into the
not
history
hiding
books.
his dignity.
We know, in short, very little. But we know enough to glimpse a city and empire where murder was a real and constant danger. Only the most sensational cases appear in our sources. We hear, for example, about a senator who was accused of pushing his wife out a window, and about a prominent politician who stabbed his lover after a night of passion. We hear also about an urban prefect, effectively the mayor of Rome, being murdered by one of his slaves, and about a senator who was beaten to death in a sauna by his bath attendants.
I feel like that would probably be the most common around this time, right? Would be like a slave revolting against their master by killing them, right? Because they can normally find them in like a vulnerable position, and then also probably someone else exit on or like funds it or something like that. I could see that one happening quite a bit. But then maybe one of them got a taste for it and became a serial killer.
Cicero has catalogues of horrors in a few of his more salacious court speeches, most notably in his defense of Cluentius, where he describes the murders allegedly committed by his client's stepfather Oppianicus.
Ooh.
If we can believe Cicero, Oppianicus arranged the deaths of his first wife, his mother-in-law, his brother-in-law, his brother, and his brother's wife, among others, all from an effort to gain their riches.
They call family blood. You're not meant to see all of it. He arranged it, though. Does that make him a serial killer? I feel like that makes him just a serial whack job, but he's not really doing it, right?
He ordered additional murders during a stint in local politics, and eventually poisoned 2 of his own children. If Cicero's allegations are true, Oppianicus was a prolific murderer. But since his crimes were motivated by a desire for wealth and power, he was not, by our definition, a serial killer. Nor was he one by any Roman definition, since the Romans had no term or concept for a person who kills repeatedly for psychological reasons. Partly
Well,
on
that's
account of
just
this,
normal.
and partly because we know so little about ancient crime in general, serial killers are difficult to find in the sources. There are, as we'll see, a few candidates, but let's survey the evidence first. For most people, the first Roman murderers who come to mind are emperors. We
that's
know,
always a good
relatively
sign.
speaking, a lot about the emperors. In fact, with the exception of Cicero and a few saints, they're the Romans that we know the best, or at least they're the Romans that we think we know the best. Our ancient literary sources, which tend to present emperors as either paragons or monsters, are problematic. But it seems clear, in any case, that more than a few emperors were murderous.
Well, I would believe that. I kind of assumed that. I mean, it was a quite a surefire way of getting into power, wasn't it? Just kill your way to the top. Also, as well, like, I'm sure if you asked our governments now in today's age, in an ideal world, would they want the ability to censor the news of serial killers coming out so that they could put out information on their terms and only their terms, and then also let the police do their job without interference on like a really highly public scandal? You know what I mean? Now, in these times where it would have been so much easier to suppress any story that would have been written by that, for that purpose. And I feel like on a leadership thing, I mean, a scared population is one that they can control less. Do you know what I mean? I could see why there would be a lot of writing on it.
One thinks of Tiberius hurling victims from the cliffs of Capri, or perhaps of Valentinian, who kept 2 man-eating bears. The most infamous emperor of all was Nero, who had his mother murdered, arranged the deaths of many prominent citizens, and burned Christians alive at his dinner parties.
Was this the Nepo
among
baby?
many other crimes. There is no reason to doubt that Nero was a tyrant, or that he became paranoid and cruel. But there's no warrant for calling Nero, or any other Roman emperor, a serial killer. Even if our sources could be taken at face value, which they cannot, it would be difficult to disentangle personal viciousness from political motivation in any given instance of imperial cruelty. We simply don't know enough to make a judgment. There were professional killers in Rome, as I discuss in my old video on assassins. The most notorious were poisoners, who sold deadly subtleties that could be sprinkled in food or wine. But a few emperors had frumentarii, that is, intelligence agents, who specialized in killing enemies of the state.
God, you know what? If you took me back to this age, I know there's a lot to be scared of. Like the violence and maybe a lack of compassion or care for a single person's life if you're not like someone. But I'd be terrified to touch any food or drink, like because it feels like poisons. Even like the medieval ages, like royals just getting poisoned. It felt like such an easy thing for everybody to do. Like it was just out there. I would be terrified. What if you bumped into the wrong person on the street and they've just got like a lifelong vendetta against you?
In particular, we hear about a centurion named Achilles, who was known and feared as an assassin of senators.
That's a banger name.
One wonders whether men like this ever indulged in extracurricular murders. Again, however, we don't have enough evidence to call any Roman assassin a serial killer. What about...
Yeah, but he has an excellent cover-up. I mean, it's the same if he did extracurricular murders. I mean, the most excellent cover-up of all time there, really, isn't it? Oh, no, I was hard to kill him. By who? And then you just make up a name. No, that's like the easiest out ever. And if it ever gets a bit too tense, you just move somewhere. That's your retirement. Start a vineyard. Raise some animals. You did your bit.
Gladiators. Contrary to popular belief, gladiators were not, or at least were not supposed to be, bloodthirsty maniacs. The Roman crowd liked to see fighters who showed mercy to their defeated opponents. Gladiators themselves seem to have taken a certain professional pride in not killing needlessly. In their epitaphs, several gladiators emphasize that they hurt no one or saved their opponents. Interestingly, the tombstone of one gladiator mentions that he killed an opponent specifically because the man was killing people he didn't have to. If there were serial killers in gladiatorial schools, in other words, they probably didn't last long. Our only real evidence for serial killers in ancient Rome comes from stray anecdotes. The great Dr. Galen, for example, mentions an innkeeper who sounds like a combination of H.H. Holmes and Sweeney Todd. This man killed travelers who stayed at his inn, butchered their bodies, and served the meat, which tasted, Galen assures us, like pork, in the hotel restaurant. His crimes were only revealed when a customer found a human finger in his dinner.
Oh, that's vile.
The closest analogues of modern serial killers, however, were the bandits who lurked along the roads outside Rome.
Wait, so when they're like cracking crime cases, it's like a footprint or a fingerprint. How they've cracked that crime is that they actually left a whole finger. But they really were quite relaxed with it, weren't they? Like, can you imagine that? We have to find a crumb with some DNA on it nowadays. But back then, it's just like, oh, whoops, left the whole finger in this one.
The cruelty of highwaymen was a trope in Roman literature, but one based in reality. A number of Roman tombstones, including one for a gladiator and one for a whole family, include the detail, "murdered by bandits." Most of the thieves who killed their victims did so to avoid detection by local authorities, but there were a few who seemed to have killed for the sake of killing. One
That's
bandit
kinda bandits,
in particular became notorious for cutting off his victims' legs and watching them bleed to death.
Oh.
Professional bandit hunters were the nearest ancient equivalent to the police who investigate serial killers. Some of these men became famous. We hear, for example, about Sostratus the Boeotian, a huge man who lived in the wild, tirelessly pursuing bandits and murderers.
We've got
At
Batman.
least sometimes, these men were effective. The epitaph of one Roman woman killed by bandits ends with 2 words, et vindicata, and she was avenged. At least a few of Rome's serial killers may have died in the Colosseum. It was customary to execute bandits and murderers during the games, often at the lunchtime break between
that's
beast
valid.
hunts and gladiatorial contests.
Batimus.
One Roman poet describes watching a man condemned for heinous crimes being crucified and then disemboweled by a bear in the arena.
Oh,
We know nothing about this man, or about any of the hundreds of others who died in similar ways on the blood-stained sands of the great amphitheater. But there must have been many like him who fell, along with their victims and their crimes, into the silences of history. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting Told in Stone on Patreon. You might also
Where's
be
my mouse
interested
gone?
in my book, Naked Statues,
Oh, there it
Fat
is.
Gladiators, and
that was a good one. Well, it was a good one. It's kind of shocking, but from what I can tell, is they actually seem to have less serial killers, but maybe less documented ones. How are you going to leave a finger in the bowl when you're trying to be sneaky? Like I'm not trying to give anybody pointers here, but that just seems like, serial killer 101. If you're going to murder the people that come into your inn, don't serve the other people in your inn a finger. That one seems like a bit of a giveaway, to put it lightly, To find serial killer back then, we make these labeled now, it would have been a thing. That's true. That's true. I think, I guess it's probably back then, there was like, oh, he murdered this person, this person, this person, and it was mostly for like political gain or like money. We wouldn't class it as a serial killer, he said. I actually didn't know that. But that probably is a cultural thing, is you probably couldn't kill your way to the top as readily as you could back then. I mean, back then you could murder the opposition, cover it up, and climb that ladder. Do you know what I mean? And it was just a thing. Now it would just be too difficult to cover up. Not that we should bring that. Oh, back in our day, we used to be able to kill our way to the top. No, but that's probably a big reason, right? I think it's a terminology thing. I mean, there's definitely people that killed for fun. 100%. That's been around since the dawn of man, I think. But right, that was enlightening, I guess. But I appreciate you. I'll see you in the next one. This is our second one on the new channel. If you enjoy it, please drop a subscription. I would appreciate it. We do have another main one that's a bit more lighthearted. It's just iSimsy Reacts. If you would like to go and drop a follow there, that'd be good. I'll see you in the next one.